Hey everyone, and welcome to SideQuest, the every other week Authors and Dragons podcast when Drew gets tired of our shit and needs to drink himself into oblivion. This is one of those because we have a kind of a small cast tonight. It's myself, Rick Gualtieri, and I'm here with the man who wrote my books, my alter ego, Robert Bevan.
Hi. It's pretty much Rick talking to himself.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first time that happened. But tonight we have
we do that a lot.
But we gotta have a special guest. You know, if you've ever dreamt of Rick Gualtieri and Robert Bevan tag teaming on another guy, well, we have a treat for you.
Yeah, we know that you have.
We have a treat for you because we're here with author Scott Burtness. Hey, Scott.
Hey, nice to meet you. So what you're saying is I'm a sticky love child?
You are the rotisserie chicken.
Hot, dripping, and juicy.
God, no, I will never be able to get that image out of my head.
What do you want, Rick? Neck or cloaca?
All right, well.
Welcome.
Yeah. That's probably about, like, you know, I'm waiting to hear that click of like, fuck this, I don't need to be on I don't need to be on a podcast that badly. So Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where I should start, and I suppose it might be easiest to talk a bit about how I actually found you a few years back. So I'm an indie author. I started putzing around with putting pen to paper. I don't know, 10 years ago, give or take. And early 2014, I released my first horror comedy book, Wisconsin Vamp, Bowling Vampire in Wisconsin. And then a little bit after that, I thought it'd be kind of fun to start doing sort of a charitable type event where I would get vampire book authors to pledge to donate to the American Red Cross or Canadian Blood Services. And Rick, that was when I first discovered your Tome of Bill. I was doing a bunch of research online, stumbled across your books, grabbed the first one, read it, loved it, and started stalking you. So I guess that's my complete profile. I write horror comedy and I stalk Rick.
Yeah, and in the years since, I've like grown used to it. In fact, like these days, I purposely, like, when I shower, I leave the shades open.
Which I appreciate. I wanted to call that out. I've gotten some great pictures. It's fantastic.
I gotta write a vampire series.
Shingles, like, you can pretty much do anything there.
Yeah, but that's not getting me stalked in the shower.
That is true.
So the internet deserves these pictures.
Come on, people. There's 28 shingles stories here. When are you going to start, like, stalking us? I mean, come on. There's 6 of us on this podcast. At least one of us has to go missing, and and we find out later that you made a skin suit of them.
I'm just even thinking there's got to be some quasi boundary pushing fanfic out there, right? I mean, we're high past time.
I mean, if any of you are under 2X, then my skin will do.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, I'm thinking if anybody were to write shingles / fiction, I'm not really sure how you'd differentiate that from actual shingles. It might, yeah, because it's tamer.
You're not in the big leagues, son.
All right, so tell us a bit about the Monsters of Wisconsin series there.
See, I'm looking at your Amazon page now. Yeah, I guess they do all have a theme here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, how do you get started?
Big on themes. So the running joke that's mostly true is that the first book started as a screenplay. I lived in L.A. I had gotten done rewatching Interview with the Vampire, and there's that scene where sickly little Claudia gets turned into a vampire, and all of a sudden she's radiant and glowing and beautiful. And the thought that got stuck in my brain was, it just can't be that easy. Like, what actually happens when somebody gets turned into a vampire? And once that thought started, it kind of just continued with, well, okay, I've seen the guy that's fulfilling the dark prophecy. I've seen the guy that becomes an instant, sex symbol, the guy that is, total zero to hero. What about the other guys? What about the line cook at a truck stop in Wisconsin that likes to bowl, drinks too much beer, and can barely match his socks? What happens to him when he becomes a vampire? And that's where it started.
Your Wisconsin vamp cover pretty much says it all. Who's that guy? Is that just a random model, or is that you?
Yeah. So right. My cover designer just uses stock photos and then does the graphic design. So
she nailed it.
She does great work, and it was a lot of fun, working on that first book. And then the second book was, not planned or expected. But really, when I wrapped up Wisconsin Vamp, I realized that there was another story I wanted to tell. The main character's best friend / nemesis. So, second book, it's chronologically follows the first book, but the perspective shifts now to the second person in a trio of friends. And now it's his misadventures becoming a werewolf. That's Northwood's Wolfman. And then at that point, I had 3 buddies in Wisconsin, got to have 3 books. So I rounded it out with Undead Cheesehead, where the third friend has a whole series of misadventures becoming a zombie.
I want to back up for a second because I'm so happy to know that there's like at least one other writer out there, and I guarantee there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, who saw like Interview with the Vampire and their immediate thought was, "Fuck you! I need to mess with this."
Yeah, and actually, what's funny, we were talking about the cover for Wisconsin Vamp. One of my very early sort of review / reader, contacts, Rick, was basically somebody accusing me of stealing your cover. I kid you not.
I get it because, for John Hartness, who's also on the podcast, for a while there we were using the same cover designer, and he was literally using the same stock photos. I'm doing manipulation. He was manipulating them differently, but you could tell it was like the same vamps on both our covers. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, just got to adjust the contrast and the brightness and flip it over to mirror image, and you're good to go. Brand new book.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had to tell fans a couple of times that because they'll be like, dude, I just found this book. It's about a nerd vampire. Should we pile on him? And guys, I don't own. It would be nice if I owned a trademark on that, but chill, It's not the most original idea on the planet, on the world.
Right. Yeah, and that's. It's funny that we talk about where the books come from and whatnot. I knew out of the gate that I was not going to write the Great American Screenplay. I knew when I decided to flip it to a novel, it was not going to be the Great American Novel. What I really wanted was a book that I thought was fun, that could take somebody's mind off their troubles for a while, give them just a good quick page turner. And that's what I aspired to do. And I think that's what I got to. I got to something that is enjoyable, doesn't take itself too seriously, and hopefully folks have a good time with.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good way of doing it because, I'm not saying everybody who does this, but in my mindset, if you're sitting down purposely saying I'm going to write the Great American Novel, chances are you're a pretentious douche. Versus sitting down and going, I'm just going to write something that I think would be I would enjoy reading.
Completely.
Yeah, because then the thing is, okay, I wrote something I enjoy, so let me just find people with a fucked up sense of humor like me, and that's how you get it going.
I don't want to spoil anything, but I did discover that apparently my sort of fucked up idea of how a book should end is not what other people expect. So, for those of you that might be listening to this and you decide to give book 1 a try, sorry. And trust me, book 2 is worth it.
Please tell me you don't end mid-sentence or something.
Yeah, what was the old Monty Python bit where it ends with Yeah,
it's like Antissa to be continued to the next book.
You sat down to take a dump and the end.
All right, so you got the 3 classic monsters, vampires, zombies, werewolves. of those three, which is your favorite and why?
Good question. So my favorite is actually the main love interest of the first book. Her name's Lois. She, spoilers. I like Lois. She's we'll just put it this way. She's descended from a long line of very powerful witches, and I think that her character is my favorite because her arc starts with her being the bright, shiny thing that everyone's trying to win, and ends with her being far and away the smartest person in the room, the only adult in the room oftentimes, and just writing her character and her arc through the series was a lot of fun.
Yep, I hear you. I think in pretty much almost, well, not in all my series, but definitely my Bill series. It's kind of one of those, I'm writing the main character from his perspective, and he is definitely not the shining star in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Poor Bill. Now, I would say that my other most favorite character in the series, again, not one of the main three. In book 2, I introduce a Sasquatch named Kevin, and Kevin's adorable. He's great. The Harry and the Hendersons popped up on Netflix, I don't know, like a year ago. I hadn't watched it since it first came out, and I realized when I was watching it again that I'd actually written Harry into my books.
We did that with my family a couple of years ago. Found Harry and the Hendersons, and I thought, I remember that when it first came out, and we should watch that. I think I was the only one that made it all the way through.
Yeah, I think it held up all right. Found that guy was solid. But it's always fun to kind of look back through your work and then kind of start going back through a lot of your influences that sort of help shape your taste and your interest and everything else, and sort of discover where those things happened further back in your life that really did show up in your writing. They showed up in your characters or the scenes or the settings, your world building. I don't know if I could ever look at my work and not see, my favorite John Hughes movies or, my favorite episodes of Buffy coming through in what I'm writing.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of movies and stuff, and I'm taking all that shit in, and when I go to write, I mean, a lot of times it's like a salad bar, of like, okay, let me do an homage to that or the homage to that. And speaking of movies, Bob, you're much nicer than me, because I'd do that. I'd be like, hey family, let's sit down and watch Harry and the Hendersons, and then I'd put on Abominable instead. Like, yeah, you're not falling asleep now, are you? But I am admittedly probably a terrible parent, because I know more than. It was a common thing for my wife to go out and be like, okay, I'm leaving you alone with our 2-year-old child in their formative years, and then then she'd walk in and there's a movie on the screen, some demons ripping out a guy's entrails, and then I'd have to sit down and get the not age appropriate speech for the 40th time that month. On the upside, Halloween, nothing Halloween related freaks out my kids at all, so I consider that a win.
Absolute win. Mission accomplished.
We're going through a bit of that right now. Not necessarily with horror. I'm not a horror fan, but just with comedy, being on lockdown and everything, been tearing through some Netflix shows. My kids are getting old enough, especially my son. He's 10 now, and he's getting the humor and a lot of stuff that I'm surprised about. We're tearing through Community right now, and his sense of humor is a lot more sophisticated than I thought.
See, it's cool that your family will sit down and watch stuff with you. Mine will not. I will have the kids be like, I want to see this movie. I want to see this movie. I want to see this movie. Hey, we rented the movie. It's on TV. Want to watch it with Dad? And if I were on fire on the couch, they wouldn't piss on me. It's no, we don't want to watch it now. Oh, fuck you then.
Kids, youth is wasted on the young.
So Scott, what are some not to change gears, but that's what we do. because it's like we're like I think the podcast will have squirrels here. Well, first of all, how are things in like Wisconsin? I know here in New Jersey, we're locked down. I think that if we step outside without a mask, they shoot us on sight.
Well, you had to go ahead and ask. So, dirty secret? Not really.
Porn.
I'm actually not from Wisconsin. Yeah, that too. No, I'm in Minnesota.
You can't.
It's funny. I sat down, wrote the first book, and Minnesota, whatever. I just couldn't get it to sound right. And I was like, well, where would all this stuff actually happen? Where does all the really weird stuff happen? And the answer is always Wisconsin. So, I'm the guy on the other side of the river, posing as a cheesehead. But for us in Minnesota, we're doing all right. Our governor has locked us down too, but in a very Minnesota nice kind of way. Like, hey, everybody, we have this really critical stay-at-home order. All of the non-essential businesses are going to be closed. But don't worry, because we've decided that about 80% of the businesses are actually essential, so you're pretty much good.
Okay, so let me ask, knowing that you were like sitting across the river, like glaring at them with side eye. So is Wisconsin Vamp essentially a giant fuck you to everybody in Wisconsin?
No, it's actually more of an F you to the folks in Minnesota. It definitely embraces everything of just sort of Midwestern small town culture. And the only time that you really feel like there's some pretty nasty poke and fun is at a couple of mullet-headed Vikings fans that are hanging out in the townie bar. So, to any Wisconsin folks out there, I love you. You're my people. You're my spirit animals. For my fellow Minnesotans, sorry, but we really did have it coming.
See, like you guys out there in the Midwest are actually like nice. You have those nice thoughts. Like tri-state area people, we're like, I was telling some of the mods in my Facebook group. I was like, you have to understand, everybody, like when you're in New Jersey, you hate everybody who's not from New Jersey, or anybody who's not from your section of New Jersey, and occasionally you hate those people too. Oh, it's like they just, instead of like the Garden State, it's like welcome to New Jersey, the loathing state.
So I was going to ask about that. Your books seem very regional. Are they accessible to people outside the region, or is there a lot of inside stuff there that you kind of have to be from there to get?
Yeah, good question. I'd like to think that they're accessible. It's interesting sometimes looking at where they're selling best around the country. I think that anywhere else you go in the country, people have ideas about the Midwest, and they usually roll up into things like, "Wow, you guys actually do have indoor plumbing? That must be cool." I was in Virginia for work back in January at a restaurant, talking to the waiter, mentioned I was from Minnesota, and the question was, "How do things work?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, buildings and cars and stuff. How do they work when it gets that cold?" So there's some interesting ideas around the country about how we actually manage to function up here. But I think that the books themselves, the humor, the people. You could take the cast of characters from the Monsters in the Midwest trilogy, pick them up, put them down in small town anywhere, and it's going to be familiar. Everybody knows
that makes a lot of sense.
That guy. Yeah.
My books are about a group of guys from Gulfport, Mississippi, and I just lean in hard to Southern stereotypes, and it's fun.
Oh, yeah. Trust me, and I do the same. Like, if you read my books and you should have a loathing for people in New York. And it's like, yes, that's purposeful. But yeah, so I think, again, it comes down to just, your world building and, who you're putting in the room together and why are they in the room. Interestingly, I do find that a lot of my ebook sales are in like England and Ireland. And I often find myself wondering, are they really going to get the humor? End of the day, I think, they're going to get it.
It doesn't matter if we're talking
that's
America.
Exactly. I treat my books as cultural primers for the greater world. That if they really want to understand us, they should totally pick up my books.
There's somebody in England, probably pissed off. It's like, undead cheesehead, pass me a scone. I don't know what the fuck this is.
Werewolves and meth. I always knew it.
Well, it's, I talk about one of my guys living in a rambler in the woods. The rambler being what I just sort of assumed everybody knew was a type of house. And I got a review that said, this doesn't make any sense. Why would this person be living in their car in the woods?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, they're living in a Dodge Rambler.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, those things are going to happen, and if they show up as a 1-star review, so be it. You can't win them all.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of silly. Some of the things that people will ding you for, or it's like, okay, I don't know the colloquialism, so one star rather than just Googling it.
Right, right.
And it's amazing that's the thing that ruins it for it. Now this guy's, something. If anything, thinking somebody's living in their car in the woods, that makes it funnier for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Oh man, you got any good 1-star stories?
I have a 1-star review that only says sucked. That's priceless. Like I should probably print that thing out and frame it. I have a lot of respect for brevity and clarity and sincerity, and that reader nailed it. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, you should use that in an ad. Sucked. It's like Wisconsin Vamp sure does.
Yes, in fact, it does. No, I mean, it's funny. I just recently got audiobooks done.
Cool.
And the narrator that I worked with, we put them out into the world right around Halloween, and I pushed it out to a bunch of readers that I thought would be good listeners. And one of the responses came back, and the review was really, really critical of the narrator. And my narrator sent me an email. He's like, "What the actual hell? Why did this person just rip off my skin and use it to wash their car? Like, what the geez?" And so we got to have that long conversation about how
good car washing material.
No,
for the audience, don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, unless the guy, no, but. It's the nature, it's you're going to put yourself out there. You hope that most folks like it. That a lot of people aren't going to, and that's okay. And, for me, I've always just tried to look at those not so great reviews as, give them a solid read them again, see if there is some good constructive criticism in there that you can use to make your next piece of work better. And then let it go. Yeah. And move on to the next thing.
I kind of look at it as better reaction than indifference, because if somebody loves my book, that's great. But something, I would sooner somebody hate it with the fury of 1,000 suns than just read it and be like, meh,
Meh.
Because at least I did something. I angered the shit out of them, and something, that's an accomplishment as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I did not expect. I was thinking, all right, the reviews for my books are going to be evenly distributed between 5 stars and 1 star. Getting a 3-star review kind of pisses me off more than anything.
Yeah. You're like, so I just helped you pass time on the toilet. Great.
I gave a friend one of my old DMs, I gave him a paperback copy of Bigfoot Hunters, and this is the reason I stopped putting my author photo on the back of my paperbacks, because he used it as and every time I'd come over and be like, yeah, it's like I'm reading Bigfoot Hunters when I'm on the toilet, and that picture of you on the back is just staring at my junk, and he's like,
oh, no.
and he's like, think about it, He's like, some people believe when you take a photo, you steal a piece of their soul. So a piece of your soul is always staring at my junk. I was just like, yep, the photo's got to go.
Yep. Oofda. That's right about the time that you basically end all hard copy distribution and just go with the ebooks.
So you got witches, you got vampires, werewolves, and zombies. So are there any monsters you haven't written about that you'd like to?
Quite a few. So I've got a little side project I'm working on right now. It's basically a picture book for adults. The title of it is A is for All the Monsters I Can't Stand. And just picture your curmudgeon-y grandpa complaining about all the paranormal things that just get his blood up. And then put it into an alphabet picture book. So
I'll admit, my mind went somewhere different. Like, a picture book for adults. Imagine your grandpa you open it up and he's there waving his dick at you.
Yeah, well, not that grandpa. He's on my mom's side. I'm going with the one on my dad's side. But yeah, so there's so many just fun creatures, myths, legends, paranormal things to play with. I just thought it would be kind of a fun little exercise to put 26 of them together. And then I've got a buddy of mine that's a pretty solid artist that's doing the illustrations for it. So it should be a fun project when everything's said and done.
Actually, that does sound pretty cool. Because I mean, I'm joking around, but I am a huge monster fan. Whether it's D&D monsters, cryptids, movie monsters. So that actually sounds like something up my alley. Like I'll as much as I make fun of Sasquatch and other stuff, I'm one of those closet crypto nerds who will then go on who when it gets in my in my system, I'll go onto websites and read for hours true Bigfoot encounters.
Well, there's some weird shit out there too. I mean, there's apparently a type of fairy in Ireland that actually gets inside your gut. So no matter how much you eat, it's basically eating it for you.
That's
so you
called a
never feel
tapeworm.
Yes, it's a flippin' tapeworm. So the Irish fairy lore has a fairy that's basically a tapeworm. And how creepy and cool is that? But there's some little pissed off little imp just hanging out in your gut. And the second something clears your gullet, he's opening his mouth and taking it instead.
I'm imagining more some drunk Irishman in the hospital. It's like, sir, you have a parasite. No, it's me fairy. One day he's gonna lead me to a pot of gold.
Yep, it's milk.
Colin McDonald.
So yeah, so there is just an entire world full of weird shit out there that would just be so much fun to write about. Sometimes I think that I'm done with the monsters in the Midwest world, that I've written my 3 books. That's enough. Mm-hmm. But then I always come back to, it'd be really fun to write a collection of short stories with some of the smaller characters, maybe a little bit of main character backstory, that stuff sort of, mixed together into a big casserole, just because it was a fun world to be in.
Yeah, I would say something like that. Go for it. I'm actually working on that now. I'm 2 books in, haven't been released yet, but I'm working on a thing called Bill of the Dead Adventures, where it's kind of shorter stories told from other characters' points of view. And the more absurd characters go on, kind of ridiculous adventures. Some of them are more more serious and stuff. But yeah, I mean, because I think people once people are kind of invested in a world, they're kind of interested in learning, more.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And please know that I've already pre-ordered everything you just said. So get on it.
Working on the cover for the first. What I'm trying to do. Since these are shorter, these are kind of meant to be kind of releases in between the months I have major releases. Not entirely dissimilar to what you do, Bob, which are Caverns and Creatures, shorts.
Shorts. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm I'm trying to get 3 done before I start releasing them, because that at least kind of, in my mind, if I have 3 done, then it's kind of I'm committed. If I just do 1, it's kind of I might do 1, might not do another. It's just
So Bob, I know a lot about Rick's work. I don't know as much about yours. I haven't had a chance to pick it up yet.
Ouch.
Sorry, man.
Well,
I'm sorry. I've been so busy stalking Rick and taking those pictures that I just haven't had a lot of time for side projects. But yeah, so I mean, if you wanted to give me a place to start, what would be the entree?
Critical Failures. That's the first book.
All right.
A group of nerds get sucked into a D&D world. Well, not D&D, because I don't want to get sued. Caverns and Creatures world.
Sweet.
I gotta admit, like Bob has one of the best taglines I've ever seen. What is it? Like, what if you and your friends got sucked into the game? What if you and your friends were assholes?
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And I just love that you have that printed up on on a table banner, just for conventions. I'm just like that just says it. I can't really think of any gamers, because everybody I game with are pretty much assholes, who that wouldn't resonate with.
Yeah, I was at the Southern Fried Gaming Convention or something. I had my table banner there. People walked up to my table just to take pictures of the banner. Didn't ask me anything about my books, and then left. So I guess that was good for something. I was
going to say, you need to put up photos, $5.
No, I'm just hoping they'll post that shit on Facebook or something and get me some publicity.
Yeah. Did both of you do a lot of conventions?
Not as many as I'd like to. I moved to Atlanta a few years ago, and I was thinking, all right, I'm going to get in the con scene, but then I didn't really. I do Con Carolinas every year, mm-hmm. And we've started our own Authors and Dragons A&D Con.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I'll do a couple more if I either get invited randomly by somebody that knows my work, or occasionally I'll put forth a bit of effort and apply to something. Yeah. I should do a lot more of that.
Yeah, if I ever move down south, I'm going to do a lot more, because all the conventions. I mean, there's plenty of conventions in New Jersey and New York. The problem is they're all freaking expensive to get tables at, and I'm like, going down to a Con Carolinas. Well, first of all, it's a ton of fun just meeting people, but I go down there under the assumption that, okay, with hotel costs, I'm probably not going to it's probably not going to break even, but that's okay. It's meeting people. But here in New Jersey, I mean, that's one of the things like John does. He's kind of right there in the mecca of of conventions. We can drive to these things, do them, come back. Here in New Jersey, it's like $400 for a table. So even if I can do a day trip, it's like, well, I'm pretty much already spending what I would spend in a hotel.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's true. Con math is tough. I learned the hard way. When I had the first book, my marketing spend, so online advertising, promotions, etc., and then also starting to do conventions, the booth rate, the hotel, the travel. My spend was, I was spending about $5 or $6 for every dollar I was earning. Mm-hmm. And then of that dollar, Amazon was taking 30 cents. And it's kind of tough math to sustain. It gets a little better when you have the second book out and the third book out, but it wasn't until really 2018, so 4 years into this, where I was finally earning about $1 for every dollar I was spending on marketing. So any aspiring authors on the podcast listening, one thing you got to think about is what success means for you and how you want to define it. For me, when I realized I was breaking even, and then at the end of the year, the amount that I had spent and the amount that I had made came pretty close to zeroing out, I felt like king of the fucking world. It was amazing.
I love indie authors, but occasionally I just want to reach to my screen and smack the shit out of some, because I'll see somebody be like, oh, I just released my first book and it only sold 100 copies its first week. Is that a failure? Motherfucker, I didn't sell 100 copies in my first 2 years. Shut the fuck up.
That's a brag. That is what do the kids call that? A humble brag? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Back in the day, we called that an ass kicking. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people don't understand that this is this is a tough business. I mean, yeah, God, don't even get me started on all the the money. It's like, oh, spend $99 and learn my secret of how to become an Amazon best-selling author. And it's like, I don't wish ill upon my fellow man. But if somebody said, oh, you could get away with killing the people who run those courses and take those courses, I'm not saying I wouldn't. I would do it, but.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And honestly, my advice to anybody is that $100 is going to be much better spent on just getting a beer and having a good life. I think that, anybody going into any type of creative endeavor, you need to have your art, and it has to be a part of your life. And the rest of your life needs to have a whole bunch of other neat stuff going on for all those pieces to fit together. There aren't any shortcuts. You can't drop somebody a Benjamin and get all the secrets. You just have to get out there, live it, do it, learn it, and hopefully things work out. That was a long way around basically encouraging people to take as much of their money as possible and spend it on alcohol.
But first spend it on our books.
But first buy the books and then take the change right to the bar.
The secret to writing, to being a successful indie author, is to buy and read my successful indie author books and learn from me.
Yep, sold.
There you go.
Yeah.
God,
easy peasy.
I've had more than one person get mad at me because because they think I have some kind of secret that I'm not sharing with them. I'm like, hard work. No. What's your secret?
Yeah.
It's
a fairy that lives in me gut.
And eats all me food. So I have to work hard to get more food.
He eats all me bangers and hummus.
That was better than my answer. Was to say fly to Seattle every week and just blow Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, totally. Piece of cake.
And then convince him I'm a fairy in his gut.
So of the conventions you guys have done, I've got to believe that Authors and Dragons was the best, bar none, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, there was nothing like it last year. It was like spending the entire weekend in just a haze and not even, and I don't even mean just because of all the drinking going on in Vegas. Like I was sharing a room with John and it was just like every time we would go back to the room, and it'd be like, okay, man, take off your pants. No, that's the wrong story. No, and every time we go back to the room, it would be like, dude, is this really happening? I was like, if not, hopefully they don't resuscitate me because I'm kind of enjoying it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, just huge congrats for being able to put that together, get it off the ground, get it rolling, and sincerely hope that you guys have started not just something kind of cool, but a true tradition. Because the feedback that I heard was that it was a fantastic event.
Yeah, it was a really good time. I mean, we're hoping we started something. I mean, if the country ever stops gets over like coughing on each other here.
Yeah, right.
We're keeping our fingers crossed for August in Tennessee.
Start stocking up on hand sanitizer.
I was going to say Everclear.
For more reasons. Yeah, so say whatever is 100 proof. Yeah.
Rub some Everclear on your hands, and then suck on them.
Instead of Jello wrestling, we're going to have Everclear wrestling.
My coronavirus survival strategy was basically to have my alcohol blood content high enough that not even Rodney Dangerfield could survive in my veins. And I think I've gotten there. I think I've been doing a pretty good job the last month.
Yeah, I think I got a couple of family members who fall under that one as well. Like, it's like one of those things. They go to the doctor and find out they've actually been dead for the last 5 years. All right, let's talk about something positive here. Give us the lowdown on the Vampire Writers for Blood Drive, because I mean we're talking about our work, but that is truly an act of good, right?
Yeah, and it's better than disco. So I pulled it off for a couple of years. there were a few things that I guess I didn't really fully appreciate at the time that sort of undermined that whole endeavor. And we've touched on it a bit in our conversation. Namely, that most indie authors don't sell books. It's really, really hard to get people to know that you have a book and to get them to buy that book. So when your entire event is really, hinging on the fact that people are going to sell stuff so they have money to donate, I was already off to kind of a rough start. So it was a lot of fun while I was doing it. I learned a lot about, putting together a basic website, just jumped on Wix and started doing my little web design and had a really good time connecting with authors around the country and up in Canada, getting folks involved. We did make an impact. We definitely put together some money, got it to the American Red Cross, Canadian Blood Services, but after a few years, I did the math, and the amount of time and effort that was going into it, for the amount of actual money it was generating for those organizations, I just couldn't sustain it. So I had it on life support for about a year, and then just pulled the plug.
Oh man, now I feel bad bringing it up. It's kind of like, tell me about that cute dog I keep seeing pictures of. Oh, you mean the one we just buried last week?
Yeah, after it got dragged behind a car for about a year, and no, it's. But again, I mean, these are the things that when I was talking about how no matter what you want to do, it's got to be a part of your larger life, and you've got to be willing to try things, do things, put yourself out there. The writing part of being a writer, it's a lot of fun. It's an excuse to go to the local breweries, have a couple of beers, put some crazy thoughts on paper. The business side of being a writer, the parts of it that appeal to me are things like, organizing a charitable event. For a couple of years recently, I did a thing around the Twin Cities where I live, where we would do books and beer. I would have indie authors set up shop at a brewery and sell their books for a day. Just those fun ways that you can think of to start putting yourself and your work out there.
That does sound fun.
Yeah, and that's every bit as enjoyable as actually sitting down and thinking out your plot and putting together your world. And I think it is every bit as much a part of the mantle of being an author. It's part of your job is to tell a good story. Part of your job is to edit that story. And part of your job is to get out there and have some fun trying to get that story in front of people.
All right. Now, Rick asked you about, he was interested in your charitable blood drive thing. I'm more interested in the books and the beer at the brewery.
Yeah. So, it really just boils down to me being a total narcissistic asshole. I knew that I could go and set up a table in the corner of a brewery and sell my books. And I knew that if I did that, nobody would come, nobody would care, and I'd sell maybe 2 books. But if I could get a bunch of authors to do the same thing at the same time, now it's a thing. Now it's an event. And that's going to get a lot more people interested, so I have a better chance of selling more of my books.
Well, how did you find local authors to do this? Or this is a thing you actually did, to be clear.
Yeah. Yep. So I spun it up in early 2017. I ran it for 2017 and 2018, and then passed it off to a buddy of mine. So he's still running it. But a lot of it was really through a couple of key groups that we already had in place up here in Minnesota. There's a meetup.com group called the Minnesota Spec Fiction Writers that has a lot of people involved. There's a local agent that runs what they call a monthly tweet up. So they organize it on Twitter. And once a month, there's a networking event for authors, agents, and publishers to get together. So a lot of it started with just, sort of those 2 existing communities, just reaching out, letting people know that I was putting this thing together. And then the other part of it was just, kind of good old fashioned sweat equity. I just started, jumping on Amazon, going on Goodreads, and just sifting through tons and tons and tons of author bios and titles and stuff, and trying to find folks that were local. and then just doing, introductions, going to their website, filling out the contact form, saying hi. So I got to meet a lot of just great people, some really fun authors. And again, like when you talk about like what does success look like, the first event I had to pay for the space. The second event I had to pay less for the space. And by the time I was on to my third event, the brewery didn't charge us for the space at all. They were just happy that we were bringing in the business.
Sure, yeah. I was surprised you had to pay for anything the first couple of times. I mean, that sounds like, bring a bunch of writers to a place to drink. I mean, what the fuck?
Yep.
They had some nerve charging you. But
I'm a terrible negotiator.
How many writers did you get there?
So I would typically cap it at about 20 to 25.
Nice.
I wanted to make sure that we had a good amount of variety, so that people that were showing up, could get kind of a smorgasbord of local talent. But I wanted to keep it small enough where everybody could have good conversations. So,
sure.
You want to sell your book, but more importantly, you want to develop that relationship with that person and really try and cultivate a fan, not just a reader. Like I said, it's one of those things where I kind of like the idea guy. I love the idea. I love getting it started. I'm usually not the person to sustain it or grow it. So, after running it for a couple of years, I kind of plateaued with what I thought I could do with it. And I was more than ready to just let somebody else take the reins so they could continue to build it and grow it and hopefully make it something. I
think it's awesome that you put in the legwork. You got it started. You did all this work to to get it to that point. Because I mean, I suck at that shit. I just learned this year. I just learned this year that there's a writers group in my fucking town. And the only reason I did it was because by accident, because my wife was on the library website, and she's like, "Do you know there's a writers group in this town?" No. there's other writers in this town.
But as we've established, if they're in New Jersey, they're probably assholes. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I tried that once, one time I tried to look up authors in New Jersey, and I think I did one Google search, and I probably misspelled New Jersey, and that was about the amount of effort I put into it. It's like, there ain't nobody else here who writes books.
No, it's kind of funny. That first Books and Beer event, I actually did it in a place where, by virtue of the way that the space was set up, the authors had to be in front of their tables, not behind. Huh. So typical convention, you've got your table, you're sitting behind it, you've got a good 2 to 3 solid feet of safety wall between you and that person you have to talk to. The first Books and Beer, that didn't exist. And I did a survey afterward of all the participants and just said, hey, what do you think went well? What do you think could have been done a little better or differently? And every single one said, please never put us in front of the table again. And, I realize I'm like, people talk about how, authors, generally speaking, tend to be a little more introverted. They're people that like to, curl up in a corner and actually listen to the voices in their head and write down what they're hearing. And because I'm a little bit more of, I guess, just an extrovert, it never occurred to me that I was taking 25 people and forcing them to step entirely out of their comfort zone. It was not my intention. I didn't mean to hurt people. I feel terrible about it.
That sounds like another level of entertaining, though.
Yeah, a little bit. But
like gladiator fights.
But yeah, it's so when you start thinking about yes, there are thousands, tens of thousands of people that are writing and creating. A lot of them, you're not going to find them in those sort of public communities, those public groups, those networking things. You might be lucky if you see them on Twitter liking tweets that have the hashtag writing community. That might be as far out of their bubble as they're going to step to engage with other writers. It's tough to find other writers and actually pull them into things. It's I guess just kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like an event like that where they're in front of the tables. I could see like Hartness and Steve Those guys would probably come to life during that. Me, you would just be watching as like a thicker and thicker sheen of sweat just starts forming on my face.
Just that rictus grin, just smiling, maybe blinking, lots more smiling.
So what are your books about? I have no idea. Go away. So you mentioned the adult monster book. So what else are you working on right now?
Oh Jesus, you're just knocking them out of the park, aren't you? You got to make me relive my vampire books for blood, and now I got to talk about works in progress. Raise your hand if in the last 4 years you have started but not finished at least 6 completely different stories. Yeah. So I wrote my horror comedy, loved it, had a blast. Decided after reading a bit of The Expanse and then getting hooked on the TV show that I wanted to write some hard science fiction. I mean, I enjoy reading it. I like watching it. I should write it. I lost the better part of a year trying to be a hard sci-fi writer, and I failed at science. Every science class I've ever taken in my life, I have failed. I don't understand biology or physics or chemistry. So, after a year of, pounding my head against the wall, I was like, okay, that was stupid. I tried to jump back into my existing world. And, 30, 40,000 words later was like, yep, this isn't going anywhere. So then I had an amazing idea. I rewrote, scene for scene, line for line, I rewrote The Breakfast Club with monsters. So Principal Vernon was a skunk ape. Claire was a fairy. John Bender was an ogre. I mean, it was brilliant. And the only changes that I made to the dialogue were just the tweaks needed to make them monstery. And
probably not get sued.
Exactly. Like I spent like 18 months on this like masterpiece of like a complete reimagining of scene for scene, character for character, line for line, The Breakfast Club, and then decided to Google, things like intellectual property and fair use and parody and stuff. It was like, I can't even put this up on my website. Like this is so. Where I'm at right now, like I said, playing with the side project with the A to Z. I do have a first book in a new sort of Dresden-esque paranormal comedy series. I'm sitting at about 65,000 words right now, but it needs a ton of work. So, if I can commit to it, get it across the finish line, I'm hoping that I can maybe have it ready to start querying by end of this year, maybe early 2021.
All right, cool. Now, I agree. I mean, I step out of comedy every so often to do like straight horror, and the more comedy I write, the harder it is to write something that is just like tense and like and supposed to, because I'm so used to just throwing in like the joke, like the jokes to get myself out of out of bad plot points.
Right. And like you're trying to be so good. You're watching all the right movies, you're reading all the right books, and then Cabin in the Woods pops up, and all of a sudden you're right back where you started.
Yeah, I mean, like when I'm writing the Bill books, it's like, okay, all right, this is a scene. There's no way out of it. I know, dick joke doesn't quite work when when you're doing tense horror. Yeah, although. I will say that, I mean, I don't know if I would even say that I intentionally said that's right comedy. I think that there is the potential for humor and even some of the most mundane things. And so, even if I'm reading something that's supposed to be very tense, very scary, very, very whatever, I still really hope that I can find those moments of levity, a little bit of comedy in there, because if not, it just doesn't feel real anymore. It doesn't actually feel like a complete world to me. No, so. I agree. I mean, I love Stephen King's earlier stuff, but some of the best parts are just when somebody throws out a stupid joke right before getting disemboweled.
Yes. Yep. It's true.
Because that's what people do.
Yeah, and again, it's You know,
That's what people do.
Well. Minus the disemboweled part, maybe. But no, people make
fucking Jersey's hardcore.
But no, think about every tragedy we've ever had. You know, what can you count on from, like, you know, like let's not grab anything recent so we don't get call us fucking ghouls or so. Let's go back several years to the Challenger disaster.
Let's be nice and poke fun at the Challenger.
But seriously, people just cope with things with humor.
We don't want to push any buttons here.
So time plus tragedy equals comedy, right? So I think that enough time has passed that this joke is now okay. Do you know where Christy spent her vacation? Christy spent her vacation all over Florida. Yeah.
I still remember a whole bunch of them, and I ain't saying a single fucking one. But I mean, come on. After 9/11, I mean, if you watch, it's the Aristocrats. So it's all about the joke, the Aristocrats. Right. And right after 9/11, like, Gilbert Gottfried did one about it, and it was just like you know, basically it was just like people were booing him and stuff, but at the same time it was like, okay, I think we kind of need this, because with your friends, a lot of us are cracking these like dark jokes and shit, you know, because that's kind of how we cope with this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right there with you, because for me, you know, gallows humor is kind of how I'm hardwired. I actually take a little pride in always being the person that can say the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person. I think that I've got that game pretty well nailed. But it's sometimes when you look at the world outside your window, if you can't crack a joke about it, it's going to be tough to get through your day.
Yeah, and the other thing is sometimes I find myself having to get into like arguments against people that like really I shouldn't be arguing for, but because of the shit I crack in my books, I'm like, I really can't jump on any bandwagons when somebody says, "Oh, you shouldn't joke about that." Because I'm like, you know something, there should be consequences for free speech, but you know something, I'm never going to tell anybody you can't say that.
Totally, I'm right there with you. I think that what people tend to lose sight of is that just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean people have to be nice to you after you say it. I am okay with that. And so I do my best not to be the bull in the china shop and start, intentionally taking off everybody in the room. But at the same time, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that if I say something and that results in somebody's fist in my nose, I had it coming, and I really can't complain.
Oh yeah, but at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, you know, I kind of have to defend your right to get punched in the face. Totally.
Yep. And that's again, that is A-okay too. But yeah, so I think that, you know, like we were talking about, when you live in a world of, you know, basically looking at the monsters, real or imagined, and trying to find the funny underbelly of that world, you just have to know that that's going to take you to some pretty strange places, and all you can do is smile and just have fun with it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure my family wishes I would do that less often, but but hey, they haven't divorced me yet, so
right. Doing something right.
All right, we're kind of coming up on time here. So Scott, give us is there anything you'd like to plug? Shut up!
Wow.
yeah. I left myself wide open for that, just like my mom.
Yep. Just gonna. No, honestly, I hope that if we got to plug something, that people will, tell their friends about Authors and Dragons. It's a great podcast. You guys are just a blast to hang out with, listen to. And then, in order of importance, they should absolutely be reading all your books. And when they've gotten through all your books and they're hungry for something more, I hope they'll pick up one of mine and have a good time.
You don't know how this plug stuff works. No. Plug your own.
That was exactly how.
I was going to say, they're already listened to SideQuest. They know who we are. Plug your own. Plug your own stuff, man.
All right. So I'm Scott Burtness. I write the Monsters in the Midwest trilogy: Wisconsin Vamp, Northwoods Wolfman, and Undead Cheesehead. My books are available on Amazon as paperbacks audiobooks or ebooks. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Goodreads. I've got a website somewhere. And pretty much any of the fine breweries in or around Minneapolis, Minnesota on any given night of the week.
You're a better man than me. I'm like stuck at home all the time. Well, that's on purpose, mind you. I have a kid who drives. He's like, if I need something, I'm like, yeah, pick it up on the way home. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us here on Authors and Dragons Side Quest. And likewise, Bob. Thank you for helping me tag team, Scott.
I feel itchy.
And we will be back next week with more Authors and Dragons. Until next time, bye.